Bam. Hello, my name is Kate Stallman, and welcome to this Inner Goddess workshop. I've got to say, I was a little apprehensive to call a workshop an Inner Goddess workshop, and I think I was apprehensive because there's certain words like healer and goddess and whatnot that they're becoming more normal, which is really great. And for me, for those who know me well, know that like I'm not the most effeminate woman you'll ever meet, and I don't often talk about the inner goddess type of experience. But me and a few people on my team were really talking about this next phase of empowerment and what's happening within the courses that I'm teaching and what's happening within my life and what I really wanted to share. And we just said, you know what? We're going to call it like it is. We're going to call it the Inner Goddess Workshop. So welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm also absolutely thrilled at how many people did the worksheets that go along with this. If you didn't do the worksheets, you're in trouble. You're already behind. No, I'm just kidding. You can do the worksheets. And I hope that you do, because you might find them helpful. Many people found them helpful, and in just kind of wrapping their awareness around what's going on in terms of your life and your desire and what you're doing with your time and what you wish you had more time for and what you wish you had more help with and what you want to do more of in the future based on what's really worked for you in the past and the favorite parts of your day and the key lessons and the key tools that you know really work for you, and how you can guide yourself better, and the patterns that you can see in what's not working for yourself that you know you need to disrupt for this next phase of your life. So for those of you who did the homework and got back to me, thank you. It was helpful for me to know. And I'll just, before I do a little introduction of myself, I'll just say the two biggies that came up for us as a group, and I know it says there's 99 people here live. I think, I don't know how many people registered for this, but I'm guessing it was over 400, which to me means like there's something that is in our field of like wanting as a community of people who practice conscious living, practice conscious eating, like practice like just getting better at being human, and passing that through our families and communities, that there's some recurring threads. And the two biggest threads were time, like just not having enough time, not feeling in control of time, not feeling in right relationship with time, which in an Ayurvedic perspective is rhythm. So being out of rhythm, or sensing into, I think at a more subtle level, it's sensing into that there's more possibilities with a living in tune, living in rhythm, living in a place where we're supported by time instead of feeling a friction or even a pushing against time. So if that's you're in the right place, because we'll talk about that today. The other big thread in the responses that I got from doing the homework and prep for the workshop was around identity evolution, around the sense of not like a lack of clarity, this sort of like murky amorphousness about who you want to become next or how to get there. So either it was murky in terms of the picture of who you are becoming next, who you're deciding to step into and become next, or how to make that happen. If that picture was clear, then the issue is around really how to make that go down. So I was in a prep call with a few people from my team, and I was like, I know sometimes I swear on workshops, and I swear in real life. I don't have clean language. So if that offends anyone, I'm just going to warn you ahead of time. I'm going to try not to swear, but it might happen. So if you can be okay with that, that's just me being more me. All right, I want to also introduce Lori McIntosh, who is here from the Yoga Healer team, and she will be in the chat window answering questions as they come up. All right, enough of that. Let's dive in. I am going to do a little screen share of some images, and then we're going to get into these big issues of time and of identity evolution. And first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I know a lot of us, we don't know each other. So I would like us to get to know each other briefly, or at least for you to be able to get to know me, which seems sort of one-sided in this relationship, because I really do want to get to know you more. All right, so just a little bit about me. I'm actually going to share a lot of images about me, and partly the reason I'm going to do that is so that you get a sense of what identity evolution is and how you can start to bend space and time and how you can sense Dharma. Because if there's anything that I'm devoted to, it really is that. It's like, can we just get amazing at being who we want to become next? So this is me, totally being me. I'm in the yellow jacket here, and this is at a yoga healer retreat in the Tetons. I'm doing one of my favorite things, which is I'm talking about the plants to the people who are in the yoga healer courses. So for me, I started yogahealer.com in 2001, and the whole mission and purpose of Yoga Healer is to spread personal and planetary wellness. So we help people thrive in their bodies and in their lives and their communities, but also we help them thrive in their ecosystems, and we help their ecosystems start to thrive to support the life, the humans, the communities that are also living there, right? And so that's a big part of who I am and what I do. I was an environmental activist before I became an Ayurvedic medicine practitioner. I worked in Washington, D.C. for an international environmental nonprofit on global warming. That was my dream job out of college. And then I left that to go into Ayurveda because I wanted to help humans become more conscious. Just like, why do we have these environmental issues in the first place? Why are we so out of sync? And that has been me in my life. That's what I've devoted my life to. I'm going to show you a few pictures of myself in my life, and I'm going to talk a little bit about before and after in terms of identity evolution, in terms of time, so that you can relate this to yourself. So I want to cut and paste a bunch of stuff into a window here. This is kind of a fun thing that we can do, is just look at like, what are the key things that we talked about doing today? So if you're someone who wants more control of their time, right? And if you're someone who really wants to sense into who you want to become next, like, how do you do that? How do you pinpoint when your body wants to change behaviors? How do you actually make those changes once you know what those behaviors are? How do you regain a sense of control over your own identity evolution, and also a sense of release? And we're going to talk about that a bit today too. That's on my whiteboard behind me. How do you befriend your constitution, knowing that your constitution and your dharma is totally interconnected? Like, who you desire to become in the next superhero version of yourself is very much linked to your physiological constitution, your Ayurvedic constitution. And for those of you who don't know Ayurveda, the word Ayurveda means Ayu means life, and Veda means to study, or a science, or a study of. And so it's the study of who you are and what this life is and what this cosmos is. And so as we attune to Dharma, which is purpose, right? Who we feel driven to become next. And for many, I know from the emails I received, like for many people listening, you feel like a loss of control over time and a loss of control over choosing who you can become next, given the limitations of time, energy, money, relationships, jobs, etc. So you feel constricted. That was a lot of the responses, and we got a ton of responses. So that was interesting to see that was a lot of responses that came back in. So how do you regain a sense of that you get to create who you become? You get to create your life. And sometimes that's super, super hard, depending on what starting point you're coming from. And some of you have already mastered that to a degree, and now you're looking for like amplification of impact. And so if that's you, awesome. I hear you. Me too. That's what, it's the next level. So how to befriend your constitution to empower this next level, how to manage your time to most effectively deliver both personally and professionally and still have time for what's most important to you, and then how to maximize your true potential. So all of these things are totally interconnected. And if there's anything that I want to drive home today, is it's that everything I've done since coming into the field of Ayurveda, and since coming into the field of helping design curriculums to help people become healthier, happier, more effective versions of themselves, like that's all I've basically done in the last 15 years. And the reason that I've done that is to, let me just see, I'm just seeing that, there we go. Sorry, I was just changing the spotlight because it seems going on and off me and Lori because she's finding the chat window. Awesome. Is the reason I've done this is because I had health issues growing up. I had health issues that were totally optional, meaning there were things that my parents could have done so I didn't have those health issues. I see how much is avoidable. I lead a course called Body Thrive. It's based on a book I've written called Body Thrive, which is about up-leveling your body and your life from the 10 habits of Ayurveda. What I find is that when people have the baseline habits to thrive, that all of the sudden they're able to have more control of their space, of their time. They're able to get much more clear vision of their dharma on the next level, of their purpose of the next level. They're able to intuit more easily and bring that intuition into reality. They're then actually able to uplevel their body at another level, right? It's like the unpeeling of an onion. They become more fortified, more strong, more capable, more able. And the cycle continues. As that happens, they start to experience more flow. And we all maybe know a little bit about flow. I have a cool slide here of flow. This is from Mihaly, who wrote the book on flow. He has a last name that's like 20 letters long. He's from the Czech Republic. And flow happens when skill and challenge are basically in right relationship. So where you're using all of the skills that you have and developing some new ones, and you're pushing your challenge level slightly further than it's been. And when you don't have enough challenge in your life, and that's not what I read in those emails. I didn't read many of you being like, I have no challenges. It was more of like, the challenge is too hard, the skill level is not enough. When that happens, we go into arousal. And when arousal happens in the nervous system, this is from an Ayurvedic perspective. This is no longer Mihaly's perspective. From an Ayurvedic perspective, when we're in arousal, we're in a hyperstimulated nervous system. You know what happens. It disintegrates. The immune system starts to disintegrate. So we have less power. We have less energy. We have less feeling of control. We become more of a victim. Right? And things just really, really start to fall apart. And many people here are living in a state where the challenge level of life is higher than your skill level, where your habits, your daily rhythm habits are not supporting your body. And that's basically what Body Thrive is all about, is how do you have these basic habits? So just ask yourself right now, like, what is your single greatest challenge? What's going on for you in terms of your single greatest challenge? And whether it's a body challenge, whether it's a purpose challenge, whether it's a challenge with time, whether it's a challenge in relationships, and the relationship doesn't just have to be like you and your partner. It could be a parent-child relationship. It could be a work-related relationship. And you're just letting yourself for a moment get honest. And you can put it in the chat window. I know not everybody has a chat window. You can also, it looks like there's a Q&A window. I have both of mine open. But I'd like to hear, like, what is the single greatest challenge? And if it's, for many people, there are challenges in your body around sleep, around food, or nourishment, around digestion, around not having the kind of energy that you need to fulfill your obligations in the day. There can be challenges around just not doing what you know to do, right? So that's an integrity challenge, right? Where you're like, I know I should be unplugging by 8 p.m. going to bed early because I'm exhausted, but I don't, and I stay up too late, and then I drink too much coffee the next day, and the cycle continues, and I feel more and more, often just out of rhythm, out of sync. Okay, so so from the chat window, what I'm seeing is challenges around I'm just going to scroll to the top of this list because there's a lot. Time, energy in the body, latency, health, just around health, around not being overwhelmed, around getting unblocked, around food, around work stress, around parenting and being in partnership, around energy, time, sleep, around distraction, around not thinking about changing, actually doing something, like how to take action, and how to be in right relationship with self. So self-approval, self-motivated, mode of operation. Yeah. Time management is a big one here. Focus, to take action. And you'll hear there's a lot of things. And what's important when we read through all of these is to sense of like, I'm not alone, right? Like, wow, this is like, there's a lot going on here with time, energy, focus, clutter, distraction, integrity, direction, right relationship. So when we know that we're not alone, there's some part of us, if we're smart, we can actually exhale and even lean slightly forward, and so that the kidneys get full in the back. And just in many ways, it's not like hanging your head, but it's just bowing to like, I'm not alone. And the kidneys actually get supported when the chest bows forward like that. And feel into your feet. If you're sitting, you can even stand to do this for a moment and just simply notice. And then from there, start to lift up through your armpits. So it's not collapsing in the back or collapsing in the front. It's standing in fullness on both sides and realizing that, hey, there's tons of other people experiencing these same challenges in this same day and age. Right? Like it's kind of in the water. It's in many ways, it's the culture. It's the culture that we're swimming in. And if we don't have a lot of friends, leaders, mentors, guides that are demonstrating the next level of integrated living, it can be incredibly hard to figure it out for ourselves. So simply understanding that is pretty huge. So what I want to talk a little bit about, I have a lot of different images of a lot of different slides. What I think I'm going to do, let me see if I can get us I think I'm just going to get us right into this one. So I want to explain a little bit about all of these different things in relationship. We've talked a little bit about purpose and our constitution or our body type, a little bit about that intuition has something to do with right action. We've talked a little bit about how there's things that are out of sync in rhythm and in time. So what I want to talk a little bit about now, and I'm not sure if it'll be easier to do this on a slide or on a webinar board. I'm going to try it with the slide. But what I want to explain here is in the middle column, we have these 5 elements from Ayurveda. And on the right side, we have a bit of a translation to how we actually experience these elements in real life. And so I'm going to talk about this in terms of what I found. So for those who don't know me, I'm also going to talk a second, kind of pulse back and forth between my history. Like I came in from environmental politics into wanting to find bigger solutions for humanity. And that brought me into Ayurvedic medicine. That's the healing science from yoga. And it's a deep study of life, and it's a deep understanding of elemental consciousness. And then what I did after studying Ayurveda and working in a Panchakarma laboratory, which is a deep detox laboratory, becoming an Iyengar yoga teacher and then an Anusara yoga teacher, and working with a lot of people over time, is I just started to develop my own curriculums. And I've been developing curriculums actually in many ways synchronistically along the way. I started Yoga Healer in 2001, and I've started teaching my own curriculums around then, and have continued to develop them over the last, at this point, 16 years. And what I look for is, what is the easiest way to bring the deep ancient wisdom concepts of how reality works, of these universal laws, and how to make them applicable for us right now in this day of way too much going on, way too much stimulation, way too much disconnection from the plants growing outside of our doors, way too much disconnection. In many ways, we're seeing this generationally now from each other, where teens are having a hard time relating because their nervous systems are disrupted by technology. So how do we use the most kind of, in many ways, like fundamental system of orienting towards thrive through understanding the elements, apply them to our lives to be experiencing what we want to experience next? And what we want to experience is our potential, right? We want to actually, and this is, to me, this is exactly, if we go back to that flow, that image of, I've got to remember the numbers here now. I knew I was going to jump around today. Okay, 24. So if we go back to that skill versus challenge, see, flow happens when you're in your potential. And for many of us, like I said before, this challenge level, the way we've structured our lives, the choices that we've made have upped the challenge level beyond our skill level to handle it. So what we need to actually do is increase our skill to experience the flow, because flow happens when we're in our potential. It's wild. With this, I hope you guys get to, is that flow doesn't happen with complacency or stagnation. Right? Like balance is not a fixed point. It's an arrow. So you keep increasing your skill and your challenge simultaneously. And that's where the power is. Like, that's where more control and more surrender or releases. Okay, now we're going back to 22. So if you see on the right side of the slide, you have control and release, right? These are like the magnificent opposites. You get more control and you get more release. And as that happens, you're like, hot diggity dog. I can surrender and experience more control over like what I want to make happen. Holy cow, I'm turning into a superpower. So that's more or less what I've devoted my life to, is developing modern and even like innovative curriculum around this. So what I found is this: the 5 elements in Ayurveda. Ether is space. It's the expansion of outer space. Air is movement, right? If you take a breath in and exhale, that's air. Fire, you can relate to your digestive fire. You can also just rub your hands together and notice how friction creates fire, right? And if you see like, oh, fire, you see that word dharma on the other side of fire, that's where you have that skill and challenge meeting. Like, that's friction. You're creating friction. Water is flow. Now, water is the cohesion. It's connectivity. Water is healing. It's that which interconnects, and it does it in the relational field and cellularly. It gives us buoyancy. It gives us fluidity. It gives us flexibility. It gives us healing. Its emotion is ease. And earth is our physicality. It's our stability. It's our being right here, right now, in the physical, in the body. And for those of you who are just listening and not watching, I'm like patting, giving myself the old pat down. So if we're out of sync with the elements in ourselves, we're going to be out of sync with space, with time, with dharma, with our own experience of flow, and our cells are going to be experiencing disease. And that's a problem. So in Ayurveda, they describe, and in yoga as well, they describe this 5 kosha system. Any of you who are in the yogi detox right now we went through this on the last live call, where you have, and many of you know this from your studies in Ayurveda and yoga, but for those of you who don't, it's worth reflecting on. So the physical body, the food body, is the earth body, the annamaya kosha. The energy body, so if you just like wiggle yourself around and you just notice there's energy moving in your body, that's the pranamaya kosha, and that relates to the element water. The manomaya kosha is the mental emotional sheath, and that relates to the element fire. The intuitive body That's like how you know how you know something's off. And for any of you who are like living out of sync with yourself, your intuitive body and your mental body are in a disconnection. They probably have been for a long time. Not in all cases, but I find in most cases. So that's something just to like, okay, take that in, make note. Everything's fixable, right? And that's what we're here for. And then between the intuitive body and the core nature of reality is the bliss body, which is pretty cool, right? Like that we're shot through with bliss, that like what feels good, like what we get sparked by, that becomes our intuition. That starts generating thoughts in the mind. That moves energy. We take action through the physical body. So we're doing a lot right now. And the reason we have to do a lot is because for a lot of you, there's a massive disconnect. You don't have the habits for your physical body, this earth body, this Annamaya kosha, that your physical body is not being supported by the best daily habits to run your life. And when that happens, right, your cells, honestly, they get disconnected from flow. They get disconnected from fire, which in Ayurveda we call Agni. They get disconnected from intuition, so they become desensitized. We're so incredibly sensitive. The physical body, the human anatomy, right? The human physiology, your human body is the most subtle, sacred piece of equipment ever to be invented, right? It took hundreds of millions of years, if not billions of years, if we go through the history of life, for this to occur. And right now we're in a place where there's so much disrespect for the subtle equipment. We don't know how to run our machines. And so the physical body gets toxified, right? It gets dehydrated. It gets desensitized by too much mental stimulation, not enough emotional processing. It gets polluted in terms of not being able to actually intuit that which is full of desire to experience. So that's air and bliss. And so if we can actually kind of get that, like, oh, okay. So body habits and self-care they're not optional. They're foundational to having control over space and time, which are so much more subtle. So if you have any questions or comments about what I'm saying, you can also put these in the chat window because it actually helps me kind of get that you're getting it. I love, in all of our course calls, I get to see people, so I get to see their expressions, and it really helps. It's weird to teach or to, be talking to 133 people live and not be able to see your facial expressions. Totally bizarre technology. So if you're not living in sync, let's go over what some of these body habits are. So the habits that we teach in Body Thrive, they're pretty simple. I'm trying to see if I did not include a slide on those. I'm going to just give you the book, but they're pretty simple. Actually, I'm going to just stop my screen share and come back to just me. Have an earlier, lighter dinner. Go to bed early and have a nourishing before bed routine. Like I've discovered for myself, I'm 44 years old. I've been studying Ayurveda for close to 20 years now. And, I always try to flirt with modern culture. Like, I'm like, oh, it's so hip. It's so fun. I love reading like GQ magazine. Like that's the kind of person I am. And I cannot sleep well if there's too much caffeine in my system. I cannot sleep well if I'm reading things that are not of a spiritually enhancing nature before bed. And I don't think I'm different than you. I think this is how we're wired. This is what the yogis have said forever. It's like, be super conscious right before you go to sleep and right when you wake up. And now we know from modern science that those are the 2 times of day. There's an hour before you go to sleep and an hour when you wake up. And it's actually even more condensed into about 20 minutes of like pure gold where you're imprinting your neural pathways. So you're designing your future identity, right? Huge. This is huge. If we really get this, and if you're like, reading GQ magazine and then turning off the lights, or watching Netflix or the sports game or whatever, or on your answering email, shut down, go. You have no shot at Dharma, at a purposeful life, right? The sense of Dharma, the sense of deeper intuitive movement into action, right? And you have much less of a chance of designing habit automation. So I'm going to get into that in a brief moment. But it's important for us to understand this. The next habit is start the day right, which is you wake up and you orient your awareness into the largest possible deep time, deep space perspective. And from there, then you're like, okay, I'm here. I'm a human being. I can become a beingness and deep time, deep space and dissolve. And then I can take that deeply informed, alive sense of self and bring it into action from the place where beingness is connected through intuition into action, into the now. Who am I going to become today? And this sets us in a life learner mindset. It sets us up for the day. Then we hydrate and poop, right? Like we get the inner body cleared, aligned, and then we move, breath body practices. Those are the first 4 habits that we use in Body Thrive. These are the habits of yogis that we know work over time. So if we don't have these habits, I'm going to go back into screen share now. If we don't have these habits, there's some big problems. And part of the big problems that come from not having these habits is that our past habits have their own momentum, right? Like there's already a freight train moving in a direction. So it can be hard to be like, how am I going to eat an earlier, lighter dinner? That sounds great, but my family sits down when, it's 7:30 p.m. or if you live in a city, like 8:30 p.m. Our past relationships have momentum. One of the biggest things people find in Body Thrive in the group coaching experience is that their habits are not their own. And if you have not yet had that realization, just write that one down, because it's very important for you to start to realize and take note of who are your habits connected to, right? Like who are your habits connected to? And if you think of any of those habits I just listed, earlier, later dinner, a conscious evening and bedtime routine, a conscious waking routine, and a conscious movement routine before eating, like who else is involved? And if you're the only person involved in those habits, it's much, in some ways, easier for you to change. If you're living with someone that has those habits, it's much easier for you to change. If you're living with someone or close to a group of people who don't have that habits, it's much harder for you to change. Oops, I just realized. Yeah, good, I'm screen sharing. I'm just gonna show you these are some pictures of the last Yoga Healer retreat, and people get crazy ecstatic because all these people have the same habits. And when they meet up, it's like full circuit connectivity. They're so psyched because there's just so much momentum. There's so much that's already synchronized and aligned that they can connect on the level of Dharma. And that's very unusual because our habits as a culture are so out of sync with what our human body needs to be interconnected. So when we start to understand the gravity of our habits are not our own, right? When we start to understand the gravity that if we're not actively engaged in an advanced experience of peer support, where we're designing peer groups for ourselves that are living into who we want to become next, because who we are is not so isolated, right? If our habits aren't our own, then who we even think we are is not so isolated. It's actually so much more happening in the collective. This is big. So then you start to realize, I want to hang out with people who have dialed in their body habits. I want to, and many of you who are more advanced and have dialed in body habits, you're like, I want to be in peer groups with people who are actively leaning into where that skill and challenge, right? Where that happens together. And they're leaning into Dharma. They're leaning into the next life purpose. They're leaning into, what can I do now with my superpowers? So when we go back to these habits: earlier, later dinner, early to bed, start the day right, breath body practices. Those are the first 4 out of 10. I'm not going to go into all of them. What happens is when people try to change their habits is they bite off more than they can chew. And they often go it alone. They're often not with someone who's skillful in helping people evolve their habits. And so people fail. And many of you have written, both in the forum and then also in the emails to me at the beginning of this, is that like, you've tried things and it hasn't worked. And you think it's because of discipline, right? You think it's like, you're just not that disciplined. But we don't realize it has so much more to do with guidance and peer group than anything else. And if you have good guidance includes someone who knows exactly how much you can bite off, right? And steers you to usually biting off less, getting that to automated, where you're not making a choice, you're now doing that, and then biting off a little more, getting that to automated, biting off a little more, getting that to automated, what we call Kaizen. All right, so any questions on that? I just want to see if, let me get
can you hear me? I'm here.
Back up.
Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Good. Thanks, Lori, for repeating those. Yeah, and we have an infographic we can send in the post emails. Yeah. Okay, cool. Grace, I see you're here. I'm just gonna do stop screen share, pull you in. Any let me get your video going there. Any comments on what
Yeah, totally. So Emily had a really great, you can see my kid's pirate ship in the background there. Emily had a really great comment that I think you actually just spoke to, and I wanted to draw the connection. So she said, I'm familiar with the habits. I have Body Thrive. I'm assuming that means the book. It has helped me, but how to keep from being another list of rules? It feels burdensome right now instead of freeing. And what I wanted to say when I saw that Kate just spoke to is, I think things feel like rules when we're trying to implement it ourselves. Like what I noticed from taking Body Thrive in the group and having the coaching and the mentorship was exactly what Kate just said. I started to realize I was always biting off more than I could chew. And I didn't know that because I had no reference point. I didn't have anybody to say, whoa, wait a second, like, what, you were getting up at 8 and now you're trying to get up at 5:30? Like, that's too big. And it did feel burdensome. And so the other piece I was going to say to that is, one thing I really learned from being in the group and being in the collective was like how to get to a place of curiosity and experimentation rather than, oh, I have to do these things. Because by nature, I'm a rebel. And I don't know if Kate will remember this, but when I first came along like 2 years ago, I was like, oh, I'm going to do the opposite of this. Kind of. And Kate was like, well, just do it and prove me wrong. Like, do it and tell me that. And so then that's how I started to learn, right? Kate by nature is a challenger, which was so helpful for me because it was like, yeah, okay, cool. We'll do it your way and do it my way and then tell me how it goes. And that really helped me to move away from it being another set of rules, was how do I get really curious and listen instead of being up here like, okay, I got to do this or I got to do that, or it's because I have to. Naturally, I will just repel that and rebel. And so that's a big thing about having the guidance, is that sometimes we can't really see what we're doing and how it's not serving us. And getting those reflections from like the community and other people saying, wait a second, I think you're doing that thing where you've made it burdensome, right? Because that's the way we're taught to do things, is impose these rules and regulations. It's got to be strict and regime. It became much more a curious ritual for me.
Yeah,
you know?
I love that. Yeah, and that, to me, it's so much speaks to the spirit of like what we know works from behavioral science. Like there's a lot that we know that works, and one of the key things that we know that works is being with other people who are wanting to grow in the same ways, or very similar ways. Another thing we know that works is actually holding ourselves back and just taking small steps forward. Like, that's been proven. And then there's a lot with like designing our environments so that it's much easier to step forward. So when it feels like rules to me, and this is something that in the yoga detox, for those who are in there right now, you've heard me just like, for anyone who's been in the yoga detox in the last few years, I offer that twice a year in October and in April. It's like, it's so much about deep cooperation, where if we just go back to that slide of like the all 5 levels or your head, that you have this physical body, this energy body, this mental emotional body, this intuitive body, this core of bliss that's trying to permeate your physical body so you feel energy and thrive and ease and lubrication and connectivity, and that your intuition just infiltrates every moment of your life and your decision making, because that's how you're designed. Like, that's what you're designed for. Like, if we start to just really, really get into like, can I just simply cooperate? Can my egoic self, which is somewhere in this matrix, can I just be in cooperation? And what does that mean for me in this moment? Like, does that mean uncrossing my legs and stepping on my 2 feet? Does that mean taking a deeper breath? Does that mean having a sip of water? Does that mean sitting in silence for a few moments between transitions in my day? And what I just want to reiterate back here is like this earth body, your cells, if you do not have habit automation, if you don't have these habits automated, I can't help you with the other stuff. I really can't help you with time management. I can't help you with focus. I can't help you with Dharma, with like living into Dharma at the next level. I've tried, you guys, I've tried. Like I'm like the massive experimenter. One of my ethics, one of my values, I call it ABX. Anyone who's on the newsletter list read a post on this last month of always be experimenting. So I've tried to hijack some of these things. And what it comes down to is if you don't have body habits automated, you can make some little leaps of progress and then you'll backslide. So to me, that's just a waste of time. And it's a waste of time for me to work with people that, you know, in that way, because I know if I can get your body habits automated, then we can take off like a rocket ship in terms of what can happen in terms of your control of your time, your connection to like living from Dharma, your experience of refined space, your experience of flow, of what it's like to live a life that's just in flow. And remember, flow is where we've got challenge and skill increasing, right? So it's like you're continually changing. Your identity is evolving. You're continually learning and becoming a much cooler version of yourself. All right, so I want to just show you guys a little bit about this and what that looks like. Feel free to just interrupt me at any time, Grace. Just unmute yourself and jump in. I also want to say, you guys, for those of you that are here, we have a few of these special sessions. I'm going to put the link in the panel. We'll also email the link out. I'm not sure how quickly they're going to fill up, but these are your inner goddess body and Dharma sessions where you can talk for free to Lori, who's a yoga healer coach. And Lori's on the forum right now. She's answering your questions and whatnot. You can connect with her. I have a Body Thrive group starting soon where I walk people through the 10 habits in real time and get you towards automation. I find it takes people about a year. I'm just going to be honest. It takes about a year to automate the 10 habits. But if you think about it, where do you want to be in a year anyway? You know, like, do you want to be taking your time and your space and your Dharma, which for me includes like a lot of like, you know, financial abundance and expansion. Like, do you want to be taking that to the next level? And then once they're automated for life. Like, they're done. Like, it's just more or less like people don't, if it's for a year, you don't actually fall back. You just continue to refine and progress. And to me,
well, and I'll jump in. I was going to say that the first time I went through Body Thrive, it was really narrow focus. Like, I wanted to get out of bed in the morning. I wanted to wake up and be like, yeah, what do I got going on today? Because I was diagnosed with bipolar depression when I was 12. I don't know that I remember having that experience, right? And it was like the first time through was a lot about, I just want to feel good enough to exist, to be here. I know that's a big statement, and it is. And then the next time I went through is where those things you were talking about, I started to notice there was like a bleed out, right? Where I was showing up differently in my life, in my relationships. So my kids my kids who are now 9, there were 7, I have twins, when I first went through Body Thrive, the second time through, they started making comments like, Mom, you're less scary. You're like, like I
Yeah,
was
less
so quick
anger
tempered.
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then my son said to me, "You don't nap so much anymore." Like, oh my gosh, it was like huge to see the effects it was having on my family and my relationships. And people ask me now, like, what was the biggest benefit for you? And I'm like, well, that answer has changed over time. When I first took it, I would have said, I want to get out of bed in the morning now. When I took it again, it would have been my relationship with my husband is so different. When I took it after that, it was like, holy smokes, my time in my house, like everything's starting to fall into place. And that time opening up, right? Like people often say that it's going to take time to learn this stuff. And that's not my experience, and that's not what I hear from other people. Now that I've been around long enough and I've heard people's experience, it's like, no, it gave time. It didn't take time. It gave time. It gave me
Right.
my life
And
back.
money, like you end
Oh,
up saving. So, I mean, this is the thing, you guys, and I'm gonna hijack the conversation again. When we're in a current momentum, we're making current assumptions, and like Grace just said, it's like we have certain ideas, or like Emily said, with the sense of like the rules. We have this sense of where it's coming from, and the reality of it is totally different. And it's hard to describe. Like my experience of space and time, while I continued to grow a team. We now have over 10 team members at Yoga Healer. We have a positive leadership coaching team of over 60 people. I have a 9-year-old. I have a very active, super fun life outside of my business. I have time. I have more time every year. I have more rarefied space every year. I have less mental clutter, less negative thinking, less stuff. And I'll show you some pictures to kind of land this. But when I tell you, like, these habits are the foundation, and you don't have to join the course. You can get the book. It's $20 or something like that, right? Like, and you can try it on your own. We know it's going to be near impossible to do it on your own, because habit evolution takes group dynamics over time to shift on dramatic levels. We know that. That's why anyone who comes from the yoga or Buddhist tradition knows these words like kula and sangha, and how they're the root to breakthroughs, right? So we kind of get that. But what Grace is talking about in terms of assumptions that we make about how much time it'll take, they're off. And if we can start to see that the assumptions that we're coming from, the beliefs that we're coming from, if we're not already experiencing massive levels of thrive that are ever increasing, we can assume our assumptions are out of sync with reality. And that's a hard pill to swallow, but it's also just start to notice, or what would a different assumption be like? Okay, so now I want to talk, especially to the people who are like, my body habits are dialed in. I totally am online, Kate. I get it. I've done that work. So now let's talk about really what starts to happen. And I'm going to go back to screen share, because this is why I started to design and lead this course called Awake Living, which happens after people have automated their body habits. And I want to show, I don't want to show a picture of my shower, but I'm showing you a picture of my shower. Okay. This is what I want to show you. There's a way to systematically create a way of reviewing your strengths to develop, your strengths to leverage. This is my calendar. This is roughly what my calendar looks like right now. In my Monday through Friday, we can see it's incredibly blocked. There's not a lot of busyness on it. Here's me at my walking desk, which is, I love having a walking desk. I want to show you a few pictures just of my house and what I've been up to this year. I just want to, I took a picture of my kitchen today. Now, this is my kitchen main room area, and it almost always looks like this unless we're in there using something. Like, we keep a rarefied environment for rarefied thinking and being and connecting with each other. This is something that I learned, but I had to have my habits at a certain place before my space could line up. Here's my office. Here's the view from my office. That's Grand Targhee Ski Resort. This is the Grand Teton, which is, you can see Grand Targhee's just to the right. My neighbor's house, you can kind of see the shadow of it there. I somehow landed in this place with the most amazing neighbors. It's my patio in my neighbor's house with my amazing neighbors. I'm just going to show you like space element. So when your space is rarefied like this is another picture of my office. It frees up time. So if you don't have rarefied space, this is another picture of my kitchen. There's my kid with her feet. Isn't that awesome, Grace? My mom took that. She thought that was so funny.
I'm still not surprised. That's
so not surprised, right?
Yeah.
Child that walks on hands. But when your body habits are automated and you architect your space to nurture the habits that you want, you start to be able to have a lot more connectivity. And I want to show you like this picture of the yoga healing retreat. Like this is what happens when connectivity happens is you have a lot of circuits open and ability to connect, and it feels really deeply fulfilling. Now, one thing that I know, Grace and Lori talk to a lot of people, and one thing that they say often is like how people feel really alone on their journey. And it's because we're not meant to be on a growth journey by ourselves. Like we're meant to be on a growth journey with other people. And often we need to then like bring what we learn home into our own kitchens and up-level the vibration in our own kitchens and in our own lives. And to me, this is so, so important that we really get like what the sort of like the background of it is. This is a picture of, that's my dad and me, my daughter's best friend and my husband. And we're playing this game that's based on, it's called Cash Flow, and it's by the Rich Dad Poor Dad guy. You start to be able to design your life to hit your goals, to hit your, I'm just trying to find that slide there, to hit your goals. Like what is the big goal? What do you then need to bring into the calendar? What do you need to bring into your scorecard? Here's a picture of me teaching about scorecard at the last retreat. Like, what are you scoring yourself on? So one of the things that me and my dad and my husband, we wanted to score each other on just being able to learn together and being able to learn a little bit more about like the next level economy. My husband's he's a glazier and a builder, and we decided to play this game together. So the way that we use time is incredibly strategic for connection. And so I'm going to end screen share at this point. I think I've shown you enough of my my life and my home. And I just really want to come back to some of this board of like, when we start to really get how much this habit automation to support our physical body, right? That these habits, when they start to happen, it opens us to intuition. It opens this relationship between control and release. And we start to experience a lot more flow. And we start to get really clear at another level how the physical constitution that we have is totally synchronized with our dharma, with our purpose, with like our big, like why you have the constitution, the Ayurvedic constitution, the if you will, the alignment of the elements, which for you is different than for me. And we start to like the veils between how all this other stuff works has everything to do with habit automation and just the habits in Body Thrive, just early or later dinner, early to bed, start the day right, breath body practices, plant-based diet, self-massage, sense organ self-care, sitting in silence, healthier eating guidelines, and easeful living. Those are the 10 habits. Automating those habits unlocks everything else. The yogis have known this forever. Right? And so if we're struggling, and I'm just going to keep saying this until you're like, Kate, stop saying this. If we're struggling with what our home environment's like, if we walk in and it's like, it feels cluttered, or our closet feels cluttered, or our life feels cluttered, our calendar feels cluttered. Right? If we're struggling, that's struggling with space. If we're struggling with time, struggling time feels like I wake up and I'm not like totally pumped to do everything that's on my calendar today. And I'm psyched. And there's enough space for spontaneity. Right? Which might look like a nap, which might look like for me taking my new fat tire bike for a spin in the snow, right? Like whatever that is, if we don't have that, then we're out of sync with air element. We're out of sync with time, right? If we're unclear and when we know we're in like old thought patterns and old belief patterns, right? Where our beliefs are actually like shutting us down instead of helping us live a more interconnected, aligned, on purposeful life. Where we have issues basically with fire element that are very much, linked to being out of sync with our digestive capacity. And it's kind of hard to unpack here, but like there's a lot when your physiology is in sync and there's not a lot of residual crap in the way, you can intuit, right? You can actually move that. If we go back to the 5 kosha slide, the mental sheath is bumped right up around by the intuitive sheath. If there's not a bunch of gunk and goo in the way, you're just like really super clear. Your mind is clear and aligned and ever expansive in terms of understanding how the universe works and what control and power you have. That's also increasing as your challenge and skill increase. So I just wanted to share a little bit that, because what happens, I'm gonna go back to screen sharing. I'm gonna show you a few more pictures of what's happened in my life since understanding this and living into this, because I do want to show you all what's possible, not just on the home front. I had a good time this summer. I went to Podcast Movement. I'm here with a few of the yoga health coaches who got into podcasting through me talking about podcasting a lot. And I was invited to speak on the stage about how to, it was basically this was about monetization and podcasting. And what I loved about it is I got to hang out with I live in the mountains and I got to like come in, and that guy on the right is from England and he has this really cool membership podcast. And this guy on the far right is Michael Stelzner, who does Social Media Expo. It's the largest social media conference in the world. And he's invented that whole thing. So I'm able to hang out with people that are like right on my vibrational creativity level. Here's me a week earlier with Tammy Simon at Sounds True. Sounds True is interested in picking up my books. And so we're in conversations about that. And I'm able to spend a lot of time with like the people that matter most. It's me and my bro and my sister mountain biking this summer. There's me and my dad sporting the Dandelion t-shirt on the patio. It's me with Donna Farhi, who was a podcast guest earlier this summer. And all I've got to say is I don't want this to be like a brag session at all, but I never would have dreamed that this would be my life, that I could just create what I wanted from my heart's desire, which is very much connected to the universe's desire for how I'm supposed to show up and help people. And I help people, like Grace was mentioning this morning about like, she's like, tell them how you've worked with thousands of people and how you help people get out of, massive depressive issues like I had and autoimmune issues. And we get emails every day of like, this stuff changes life. And when I automate my habits and I start to wake up to the power of community and conscious connection, and I get with people who are really actively growing, and wow, all of a sudden I'm living a life beyond my dreams. And I've got to say, like, that's what this is about. It's me giving you an insight. Like, as far as I've been able to tell all this stuff, it's pretty simple and straightforward to dial in if you have the system. Right? And that's why we do what we do at Yoga Healers. So if you're interested in talking with someone on my team, take advantage of doing one of these inner goddess goals, like figure out what your goals are. We'll be able to then really quickly figure out what level you're at, if your body habits are dialed in or not, and where you need to start so that you can be with people that are on a growth path and you can have the kind of guidance and support and like step by step so you don't bite off more than you can chew. So you actually start to experience more energy, deeper sleep, more groundedness, more connectivity in your relationships, like Grace was talking about with her husband and her children, right? And then that starts to extend into more interconnectivity in community and in Dharma. And soon you're noticing like, I could design whatever I want in my life. And when people have that realization, they're ready for the Awake Living course, where it's a whole other skill set in terms of how you intuit the next level of purpose, and then how you make that happen in real time, on time. And when you do that, how you do that in an experience of ease and flow, where you're getting stronger, you're getting more in your own constitution over time. Because when you do that, it's like, whoa, who knew that was possible? And that's what Awake Living's about. All right, you guys, I'm going to stay on for Q&A. This is, in many ways, I'm just trying to show you a little bit of like the how this stuff works. I know, you know, in terms, I hope you guys get that how you manage your time and how you befriend your constitution, the starting point is always going to be in living in sync with these habits. And these habits are just an observation of what works for humans over time. Observation of nature's rhythms are the oldest habits humans have had. So I will stay on for Q&A, and if you can, if there's anything you're seeing in the chat, Grace, that you want to presence, and I just want to say too, for those Body Thrive starting soon, if anyone just knows that you're interested, I'm not sure how many spaces are left in it, Lori will know, but you can go to bodythrive.com/apply and talk to Lori and see if you're a good fit. I mean, honestly, you guys, we don't take everybody in the course because, you know, you have to be stoked to evolve, to be able to work with me and to be in a group of people that are stoked to evolve. Because once we start, like we make changes in real time. Yeah, Grace. So any Q&A, or are we good?
Yeah, you know, I think I mean, there's been some really good conversation going on. I think Lori was just speaking to like these things that we kind of box ourselves into, I think, right? Like the staying up late piece, someone was mentioning something about feeling like that was like where they were the most creative. And I remember having an identity, like that was something I wanted to mention, like how I noticed all of these boxes I had put myself into. Like I am a night owl. That's just who I am. I'm not a morning person. And some of the work that we did, that we do in Body Thrive really helps break down like what are those boxes that we put ourselves into. And I still go back. I have reprinted, there's one worksheet about like I'm the kind of person who, frig man, I have printed that sheet so many times because it was so helpful for me to see like who did I want to become? And when I look back at the first time I printed that sheet, I'm the kind of person who wants to get out of bed in the morning. Now it's like I'm the kind of person that I light up a room when I show up. You know, like I'm the kind of person who like brings joy, who is just exciting to be around, you know, like to see the evolution of that, and it's really and truly an identity shift. And so believing that we're the kind of person who stays up late because this is what happens, we ignore too what our bodies actually have to say about that, right? Like we get into imposing our agenda on our bodies, and eventually our bodies are like, nope, sorry, you don't get to impose anymore, you jerk. I don't care about your agenda, right? So that was so just helpful in seeing where my mind was imposing, right? And not giving me the ability to really listen to what was going on, what I needed. Yeah.
This stuff is huge. I mean, we often don't, I mean, what I noticed for myself, and I've been leading yoga detoxes twice a year for 16 years. And I love that process because it brings me in deeper. Everyone who goes through Body Thrive gets passes to the yoga detox because it's such an essential part of having a great leap forward in terms of this incredibly deep cooperation between, you know, all the way through the bliss sheath, down through the intuition, through the mental sheath, through the emotional, through the energy, into the physical. And once we start to get in an incredibly cooperative experience, and that process is often a process of detoxification, where there's just simply what we call ama in Ayurveda, where there's like gunk and goo in the way, whether it's on the mental level of stuff that hasn't been digested, thoughts that haven't been digested, on the emotional level of emotions that haven't been digested, or beliefs that haven't been digested. It's on the physical level where the physical body is just toxic, is just carrying. And toxic, I use that term loosely, you know, like most of us, I mean, just in this day and age, we know we're like chock full of, like babies now are born with all sorts of chemicals. Like there's just levels of it, right? And when that stuff gets, when the stuff that the body doesn't want and the mind doesn't want and the emotions, when it just wants to be digested and processed and released, not from a mind over matter, not from like a scraping, pushing way, but from a deeply cooperative way, all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's so much easier. Who do I want to be next? And instead of like, oh, I love drinking wine with my husband at night or something like that. If that's your identity, what you'll find is that like, you'll love connecting in a way that's even better. You'll find ways of connecting that are so much truer to who you're becoming next than who you have been in the past. And this is, to me, this is so like humanity needs us to wake up. The planet needs us to wake up. Like it's the carpe diem, you know? So if you're struggling, it's a sign. So there was a question about, how do you find out more about awake living? So yogahealer.com/awake, I think will get you there, or even awake-living. And we can send some links out from that. And I'm glad, thanks Trudy for writing in that this has been amazing. And I appreciate you being here as much as you appreciate my skills and experience and generosity. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you guys, that's why it's so much, I've just got to say this before we close. It's so much easier than we think. Like when I look back, and I look back to the amount of, just like Grace was talking about her issues as a child. Like when I look back to my health issues as a child and I compare that to my child's experience, I mean, and not just on like the physical level of like having migraines and constipation and stuff, but like actually the disconnect and levels of, because awake living goes a lot into the relational field of like when all circuits are connecting and when you're able to support and nurture and co-create with each other's potential, right? Because that's where human evolution is trying to go. And when we're in that and it's happening, it feels like this is a truly magical life. And it's so possible. And it's just a question of like, get on the bus that's going there, right? Like just get in the right group, like hang out with us because we get there on schedule every single time. Like that's what we do. That's why I do what I do. I could do so many things. I'm a very competent human being, right? I could do a lot of things. The reason I do this is because it's the easiest way for me to make the most impact, and it works. And when we have that experience and we look back at like, wow, I didn't always have that experience, right? Like there were times when I felt totally alone. I wanted the neighbors that I have now. Like I was living totally isolated. I was living, I wanted a better team a few years ago, right? I wanted to feel supported with my ideas and creativity and whatnot. Well, I had to take action. I had to get training. I had to be in groups of people that were equally motivated to get out of the stuckness. And I continually make those decisions. And as I do, it just honestly, it gets more and more dynamic and more fun and more amazing. And I don't mean it as a brag, but it's like, I never dreamed I'd have a kind of life and creativity and ability to help other people because I have so much more time and so much more space. And to me, that's a sign of evolution, that you have more time and more space while having more impact. And Dharma starts to just equal impact, positive impact. You experience more flow, and your cells are just like sparking with prana and simultaneously really grounded. So that's what this life's about. That's what yoga and Ayurveda have always been about. This is what the next version of it looks like for humanity. Thank you guys all for being super supportive. And yes, it is a super fun bus. I hope you guys join the bus. You can talk to Lori.
Talk to Lori. That conversation is amazing, so important. She's such a great listener. It just gives you an opportunity, I think, to really feel understood, right? Like that was my experience having the first conversation. It's like I just wanted to be asked questions and things I didn't think of before. And it, yeah, do it. Get on the phone with Lori. I can't wait to get to know some of you, all of you who are getting on the bus.
Yeah, awesome. And I'm just going to end with like the biggest regret I have in my life. And don't worry, Chantal, we'll give you guys the recording. And if you find it's like, if you want to talk about what you learned here or these things with a friend, like share the recording with a friend. Like it's cool by us. Like we want you to have support in your life to evolve. So when I look back, people often ask me about like, oh, do you have regrets? I'm like, yeah, I'm like really into having regret because I learned from regret. I learn a lot from regret. I like to sit in review and say, you know, what did I learn there, so that I don't repeat the same mistake. You guys may have remember that little slide I showed on lesson learned. So the biggest like lesson learned that I've had so far is honestly, and I kick myself for it every time, but like I tried to go it alone. I really did. I really wanted to grow my impact and my income, both, because I love being wealthy. I really do. I love the freedom that it opens up. I love financial freedom and the creativity and whatnot. Like, to me, it's something that I want my child to learn, and it just opens a lot of interconnectivity. And I tried to go it alone, and it just weighs, like when I look back, I'm like, there's so much. It's just like the migraines I had as a child because I wasn't hydrated. Oh my God, totally optional, right? I tried to go it alone. I just spun my wheels, wasting time. But not only that, like I felt alone, and that was not fun. And I felt discouraged, and I felt like maybe I didn't have what it takes that other people had, that I maybe thought I had. And that's, you know, my biggest regret is I just wasn't hanging out with people who could see where I was at and help me get to where I wanted to go. And just, you know, I just want to say, like, I'm not so special. No one's so special. It's just a question of understanding that our incredible cosmos, it has an order, and it has some natural laws. And as we synchronize our habits, right, with these laws, we start to experience the amazingness that we had a sense of could be possible for us. All right.
Someone raised their hand. Do you want to answer one question before you go?
I do, just because it says there's 108 participants, and that's an auspicious number. Yeah, what's the question? Or someone raised their hand. Oh, I see. There's a,
yeah.
How do I do this? Attendee, allowed to talk. Alma, are you there? Let me see if I can unmute you. No, I can't. You can press *6 to unmute yourself. Oh, well, I can't get you. Just send us a message. And you guys, if anyone wants to private message Lori, you can just send her an email at lori@yogahealer.com. If you talk to her, she'll give you a lot of free trainings and amazing resources that are really particular to your needs. You guys, some of you who've been around a while know I produce an enormous amount of free content as well. And a great way to get a hold of that is to connect with Lori. Thank you, Grace and Lori, for being my support team here. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Liza and JoBelle and Ellie on the back end. Namaste, everyone. And have a really great rest of your day.
Namaste. Bye.
Bye.